guys, it's Marshall. Thank you for joining me again on the Pagan Palate. I apologize that I have not been very vocal for the past couple of weeks. It's been a long couple of weeks, this whole moving process. You know, when you don't have like a big truck, when you're going to a different city and you're trying to merge two people's stuff together, it's really kind of stressful. And sometimes you just have to, sit out on the porch, have a cigarette, and not do anything. But we are now staying at the new place. This is not the new place. This is actually my parents' place. I'm visiting them for a bit, just to come by and say hi. My parents are great people and I love them dearly. And I'm also going to get to see my brother. By the way, just real quick, isn't this wonderful? These were my grandmother's. They are 1950s nail and stained glass art, and I love them so much. I just wanted to share that with you. So, speaking of my brother though, he is actually part of the impetus for this particular video. This video is not really so much a recipe as it is insight. I do feel that a good little kitchen witch needs to understand terminology and know history. And while this isn't really history, I do feel as though that it is reasonable terminology to understand. So I was thinking about this in the car, actually, the other day. And I was like, oh, that might be a really interesting thing for Pagan Palate. Trevor, my brother, texted me just last night, and he asked me the very question that I had been thinking about. And I was like, well, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is. So he texts me and asks, what is the difference between frosting and icing, and which one do you put on a bundt cake? One, I was really flattered that he would think that I was at all an authority on any of these things. And two, hey, that's a really interesting question. There are some people who are going to tell you that one is one, the other is the other, and never the two shall meet. Then there are other people who are going to tell you that frosting and icing are exactly the same thing, and they just come from different regional origins, and that, they're just the same thing. I suggest no. I suggest that they are in fact two very different things, and I think that we, as the good little kitchen witches that we are, can find our answer to the question from nature. So it just so happens that in nature, we have two substances referred to as ice and frost. We have to look at the differences between the two. Now, the similarity is that they are in fact both water, or at least what we are going to be talking about now, because there are other types of ice of different, substances, and, that's great and all, but we're talking about things we can eat. We have water-based substances that have two different names and very different properties. How do we come about each of those? Well, the process for creating ice is that you have liquid water that reaches the freezing point and hardens into its solid form, which is ice, and it's smooth and beautiful and shiny and slippery, and the stuff that covers the roads here in Texas every winter. The process is that you have a liquid that turns into a solid. Frost is actually a very different type of ice. It is technically ice crystals, but it's brought about through a much different process. So it is kind of the reverse sublimation process. Sublimation is where you have ice that sublimes into water vapor and it just skips over, the liquid state. The reverse sublimation process, that might not be the actual term for it, but, it's how I describe it, is where you have water vapor in the air that skips the condensation process and turns into ice crystals. And this is frost, and it collects on, various objects and forms this really pretty three-dimensional crystalline thing over whatever it is that it is glomming onto. So, what the hell does this have to do with anything? Well, I suggest that it is in these two processes. It is through these two means, how about that we are going to find out what the actual definition or proper usage of the terms icing and frosting are. So for an icing, you have a liquid of some sort. You have water, you have fruit juice, you have liquor, you have some sort of liquid that you add icing sugar to, or confectioner's sugar. And you mix this up, you can heat it up, but as long as the sugar crystals dissolve into the liquid, according to proper ratios, you will have this syrup that can be poured over something and will harden into a nice little icing. Just like ice, because it was liquid and then it becomes solid. See what I did there? You know it's right. Don't shake your head at me like that. So that is where I get my personal definition of icing. Icing is the stuff that you put over a bundt cake, or that, proper people put over a bundt cake, or a lemon drizzle cake. Frosting, on the other hand, is where you take a fat, butter, or animal or vegetable shortening or the vegan equivalent thereof, and either castor or confectioner's sugar, really fine sugar, and you suspend the sugar into the butter. And you create this homogeneous mixture that can be molded over a cake in this kind of nebulous solid that is delicious. For me, that is where we get frost, because you have this substance that, or that sugar crystals are suspended in the fat and can be molded over a surface. Water turns into ice. It flows over something and just turns into ice. Frost, however, collects on something, just like frosting. See, that's where I get my definition. Also, another way to remember it, frosting has fat. Frosting is fat. There's a fat in which sugar crystals are suspended. I think that's a really good definition personally, but then again, who am I to say? So there you go. Next time somebody asks you, what's the difference between frosting and icing? Because I'm sure you get asked that all the time. It is a hot button issue, what can we say? Now you can say that you have a good idea, that you know exactly what the difference is between frosting and icing. Because damn it, there is one. As Yule is coming up, there's going to be some recipes that I know I'm going to be needing some icing for. Maybe some frosting, but I'm more partial to icing myself. It's just simpler, it's much more elegant to me, in my personal opinion. But as Yule is coming up, like I said, might need to look into, making a couple of those for you. In the meantime, you can just, sit complacent knowing that you now know the secret of frosting and icing. So thank you to my brother for making me think of doing a video like this and, breaking me out of my funk of not having any inspiration whatsoever. And also thank you to all of you for sitting here and listening to me expound upon this utterly useless debate. If you have any questions about food definitions or food terminology or kitchen terminology in general, I'd like you to ask them, because I would love to learn. I would love to find out for you. I'd love to help you find the answer for that. If you have knowledge, please do share it. Heaven knows I could, stand to learn a couple things more. As always, my dears, I ask that may you never hunger and may you never thirst. And thank you so much for sticking with me and joining me again on the Pagan Palate.